So there's this Frank Zappa interview that's been going kind of viral lately, and we need to talk about it. So let's watch just a tiny part of it, and then we'll talk.
Well, I don't know. I sometimes think that classical musicians maybe frown on pop and rock and maybe look down on it somewhat.
Oh, they actually do, yes, but it's totally unwarranted because they have a blind spot that, well, you see, being on the outside of a lot of this stuff, I can remind them of little details like the classical music that everybody reveres so much today, you know, the music from the 16, 17, 1800s, that they say is the really good stuff. Do you know how many people were writing music during those years? Lots.
Really?
Most of them you've never heard of. So, guess who survives? The ones who had hits. Not because they were the best, because they were kissing ass in the court, they made a deal with the church, or they had a personal relationship with a dictator. Either that or they managed to get good reviews. There's a lot of people who have been writing music for centuries. Most of them nobody ever will know. They'll never hear their music. So it's the one who had the hits that stand out.
Yeah, so this is a very common argument, right? You hear it a lot, and maybe at the time of this interview it was considered fresh and cutting edge and rebellious, rock and roll, anarchist, anti-establishment, stick it to the man kind of thing. Today, however, sadly, this is a line of thought you hear all the time from music professors. This is the establishment, this is the institution, and I'm saying sadly because this argument is, well, a pile of postmodern to say it like that with this confidence, you know, as a general rule without any caveat, to imply that someone like, I don't know, J.S. Bach is known and recognized today as the genius that he was, not because he was the best of his time, but because he was what? Because he was kissing ass in court? I mean, that's just, the thing is, if you read biographies of Bach, you will see very little ass kissing. Mostly what you would see is that Bach was described as someone who's very hard to work with. He was very proud, very stubborn, the kind of guy who always talked back to you. And he had issues with authority. He was once even thrown to jail by the Duke of Weimar, if I'm not mistaken, for insubordination. Bach did not kiss anyone's ass. So, but because he had a hit, what hit? What hits did Bach had? He was recognized and respected deeply in his own little circles, especially by people who knew a thing or two about music. But he was never a superstar at his lifetime. You know, he was only rediscovered 80 years or so after his death by Felix Mendelssohn. Then he started to become what he is today. I mean, I know people who are serious Baroque experts, and let me tell you, that it's hard to imagine a stronger consensus. People who know the music of the time tend to agree that there is, you know, Baroque music, then there is Bach. The jewel of the crown, and his music far supersedes anything at his lifetime. And that's why he's considered today as such a genius, you know, the Isaac Newton of classical music. And the same goes for Mozart, for Beethoven, for Haydn, for Schubert. There's a reason their music, you know, stood the test of time. Want to prove me wrong? Go ahead. Show me these composers you think wrote better symphonies than Beethoven or better fugues than Bach, but fell into obscurity because they could not kiss up to rulers. Now, okay, to be fair, obviously there is some grain of truth in what Zappa is saying here. Of course, music history is not a complete meritocracy. Of course, many people composed music throughout the years. Some of them never got the respect and recognition that they deserved for really all kinds of reasons. And yes, some of them got too much credit because of one big hit and not because of a serious body of work. So yes, these things happen. But the problem is when you take this grain of truth and you make it like a general rule, because this line of thought is addictive. There is some intoxicating pleasure in thinking that, you know, this thing that society value so much, this thing that everyone think of as this great, timeless and transcendental art, you know, this kind of thing. It's actually, it's just politics, you know, it's not worth anything. It's just, so now you know the secret, you know, what they don't want you to know. You're outside of the matrix, you know, you took the red pill or the blue pill or whatever. And there is some charm in that, you know, especially if you're young, and it has its place and it has its role and it has even some truth, as I said. But as a general intellectual fad, I think we can move on from this to better things. Love to read your thoughts. See you next time.